Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and as you know, I have been following the alleged sexual assault allegations and physical assault allegations of Conor McGregor, a story which has really been out there now almost a year. December 10th is when it has occurred, and there's been a large blackout in the mainstream media in this country. So finally, I came across an MMA media organization that dares speak up and point some of these inconvenient truths out there. WorldCombatReport.com is the site, and there's two articles in particular. If you're in the live chat, I've already sent them to you. This one dwells solely on the Conor McGregor sexual assault allegations, and this one goes much further and talks about the sport in general, combat sports in general, and throws people like Mike Tyson in there as a possible story of redemption, and then how we've largely ignored yet another huge draw, Floyd Mayweather, and some of the allegations, and not only allegations, but court documents against him. So I'd like to thank Cody Shoup from WorldCombatReport.com to come on. Cody, how are you today?
Doing well, Jason. How you doing today?
Very, very good. Now, we met up kind of by chance at Bellator about a month ago, a little bit more, I think, over at Mohegan Sun. Awesome back-to-back show. You were there to cover it. And we were kind of talking about this very issue of access and the media and how they don't touch certain issues with certain athletes, and especially with McGregor. I was seated right behind the media booth. It was kind of funny. And you shortly after put out this first report, and really what it is, and honestly, I mean, you could have gone a lot deeper, but you have all your links and what the quote unquote allegations are, and let people read for it themselves. What motivated you to finally do this?
I mean, there has been a massive media blackout in North America. You're really the only one who's been kind of touching on this story. It's largely UK and Ireland-based media sources that are putting these allegations out there, but I think it's important for us to put this out there. When I talk to people, like maybe 1 in 10 of even casual or hardcore fans are aware that this is even going on. Like the expressions of shock and disgust when they hear this, it's uniform, and it's shocking to me that because of this media blackout and no one acknowledging this, that no one is aware of it.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I think it's a microcosm for other issues out there, for other media blackouts. The Epstein case in particular, not because, obviously we're talking about a sex trafficker, somebody who may have had intelligence ties, but because there's a lot of money surrounding these people. You look at Epstein, and even officially at his death, he's worth $500 million. Well, I assure you that a guy like Conor McGregor is worth several billion, depending how many fights they get out of him, to Disney, to WME Entertainment, to Ari Emanuel, to Dana White, to the entities surrounding this. And now with Disney Plus's launch, coupling ESPN Plus, a paywall just to get pay-per-views, he was kind of part of the package. And I largely think that is definitely one of the reasons we're seeing these blackouts, especially when you have an unprecedented second sexual assault come up literally 2 months ago that has nothing to do with the first one. And the fact that, number one, that the one in December, it's now been confirmed, the woman, for all those people that want to deny the vicious details of this, the woman already turned down at least $1 million.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how many of these fanboys and these sycophants still blindly support him when a lot of these details are starting to emerge. And you can't really write off like, oh, it's a tabloid. Like when you really dig into this, even at a tertiary level, it's becoming apparent, like where there's smoke, there's fire. Um, and
So
it does speak to all the money that is involved here. When ESPN, they finally got the deal with the UFC. Now the UFC is kind of off the hook for how these pay-per-views perform. So they're getting a lump sum from them, regardless of how it goes. And you would have to assume that McGregor is a part of those conversations when they're working out these negotiations. The
well,
UFC, Go
Dude,
ahead.
come on. I mean, I think it would have to be completely naive that when Dana White was first asked about this several months ago, he had to kind of confirm the first sexual assault allegation and say, well, when I've never really talked to him about it, but when we did talk about it, he said it wasn't him. And then
Right.
with Brett Okamoto finally putting him on the hook after the BMF fights, and just getting him to even acknowledge that they're not fun to talk about. Obviously, this isn't fun. And now we have two different things. Well, now he's acknowledging this. I mean, come on. The cover up is very apparent, and it's a big money cover up. Why don't you talk a little bit about your second article? Because I thought it was pretty good. The complexion of forgiveness and exclusivity of redemption in a failed society and its sporting culture, and especially about the allegations and I would say evidence against Floyd Mayweather.
Well, again, you see a character in Mayweather where some of his claims and his allegations, I mean, they're all well documented. There are court documents. You can download the PDF files and look into some of these handwritten police reports from the mother of his children and his own children. They're out there, and they're arguably worse than some of the other like people like Greg Hardy and some of these accusations that are out there. But it just goes to show that when that amount of money is involved, it helps. It goes a long way to erasing these things from the public knowledge and from our short-term memory in these news cycles.
Well, you know what?
It's
I'm
the
seeing
same.
some comments over here, and these are some fanboy comments, or people maybe just ignorant to the situation. The situation with McGregor is such that not only was this vicious and brutal, and there's an agreement that she was savagely beaten, but she didn't make an actual statement naming McGregor until at least late December or early January. He wasn't picked up till January 17th. He showed up the next morning after the attack with his lawyer, with his barrister, to say it was consensual. And according to these reports, all of the evidence, including forensic and witness statements that go into minute detail of every part of that night. So, yes, there were witnesses, for those that are saying it in the chat. They're the ones that gave the initial statements against McGregor. They're the ones. All right. And they sent him on his way when he originally showed up. This is outrageous. This woman, from the forensic details, we don't even have to talk about the leaked WhatsApp messages that, listen, they scream of validity. Everybody who's trying to say that they're doctored or someone put them out there, yes, they just knew to put them out there with a rumor, and I mean it's nonsense. They were literal journalists. You could see their names. You could look them up. I looked these people up. These are real. But if you talk about the bruising, the bleeding, the fact that we talked about, you talk about the high level of violence in your article. You know, your article is a great gateway for people to check this out because it is important. These are only in Dublin. And it is shameful that, it takes 3 to 5 years to sometimes have this stuff even go to trial. I think that's another thing that, the powers that be are betting on, Cody.
Yeah, absolutely. UFC, ESPN, Disney, they're all hedging their bets here that the inefficiencies and the failures of the Irish legal system will insulate them from this problem. The first line of defense is the money. And if this is a lie and if this is all just a money ploy from some gold digging woman who's trying to get money, why would she turn down the first $1 million payoff attempt? And now there's reports coming out of they're going to try and make another bid. So the UFC is largely hedging their bets here that the inefficiencies of this legal system are going to help this go away. This woman is already set up for failure. You've already reported very well on Ruth Coppinger's comments on the floor of the Irish Parliament, stating that the Dublin Rape Crisis Center has stated there's a public health epidemic of sexual violence in Ireland. The climate of how these types of cases are handled and the victim shaming in that country has already set this woman up for failure and set up McGregor for success. And so if this first line of defense of payoffs doesn't benefit them and doesn't work, they're already insulated from it through that aspect. And they're hedging their bets, hoping that it doesn't go to trial. But ESPN, Disney, they're no stranger to these types of sexual assault cases. They're no strangers to sexual abuse, and they're well equipped to help support him if it does go that far.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're 100% correct. And, maybe she doesn't take 1 million, maybe she doesn't take 5. Does she take 10? Does she take 20? Does the fact that, McGregor is associated with known criminals in that region, and it's even quoted by one of the high-level sources that the people surrounding him are dangerous, I mean, I'm not going to get into the rumors who was there when this happened, but my God, this has got to be a very frightening ordeal. I really feel like, at this point, um, despite everything, it might come to the fact where she needs to go public. She needs to do a media event in the United States. But then again, I don't know how that fares with her trial there. But then again, maybe that trial fails. There was a large trial over there with a rugby player. I believe it was Patty Jackson. A lot of the,
Right.
a lot of the fanboys were trying to say, "Oh, Patty Jackson's in trouble again," or "It's Rory McIlroy, this Irish sports star." Before the New York Times confirmed him, the New York Times doesn't have to confirm anything. They're just as much a part of the problem when you think about it. They whitewashed now 2 different sexual assaults and the details surrounding them with McGregor. We had that Business Insider article that dug something up from L.A. in 2016 involving him and Charlie Ward, and that's never talked about. And there are allegations of things that have happened in Vegas and paid off. And this is an epidemic. When you enable people like this because they're worth money, and believe me, they enabled Jeffrey Epstein. And when I say they, we're talking about the who's who of technology, the who's who of globalist networks, the who's who of politicians. Bill Richardson comes to mind, et cetera, over the decades. If you don't think that that's the same game being played by the Ari Emanuels of the world, who, by the way, is Rahm Emanuel's brother. For those that don't know, like, it's Rahm Emanuel's brother, just to show you a little connection. You would be highly naive and mistaken. So what's the answer here, man? I mean, obviously we've had now, for instance, that dude from TSN, when we were first talking, he starts tweeting out my thread, just little portions. And remember that thread that's at the top there doesn't have Jason Burmis's opinion, has quotes from the sources, links to the articles. That's it. And it gets shadow banned by Twitter. And all of a sudden, all those retweets are gone. And within days, he's interviewing Dana White. He doesn't bring it up. You know what I mean? It's not like he started following me either. And TSN, that's the Canadian partner of ESPN, who's owned by Disney. Right. These are how these things work. We got Akamoto to talk. We had Ariel Helwani let his management whitewash it. Dana White got off the hook. I do a show with John Fitch. John Fitch is like, that was an approved question. What are your thoughts on this? Where does this go?
Well, this all amounts, in this case here, to just state-sponsored media. These are people who work for the UFC. They're basically just PR agents. They're not really journalists at this point. They're aiding and abetting in this damage control. And the UFC, in the same way that they're kind of hedging their bets with the legal system in Ireland, they're also insulating themselves with the way that it's access-based media in this industry. That if you want access to their athletes, if you want access to their events, you kind of have to follow along with the narrative. You have to play ball. Like you said, we met at the event of Mohegan Sun at the Bellator event, and a lot of the colleagues, people that I was speaking to, they've been denied access to UFC events for much more benign questions, for just bringing up issues with basic fighter treatments and even the Reebok deal, which everyone agrees is bad for fighters. It's bad for everyone involved except Reebok and UFC. And if we're going to be denying people access for just bringing up those types of questions, then there's little to no hope that these McGregor issues will be addressed until the UFC is already ready, that has their answers sort of handed to them and ready to go.
Hell, they banned Stitch from being a cornerman in the UFC, and that's been long-standing for just talking about the Reebok deal and how it hurt him financially to a media outlet. You see him at everything else now. I mean, he does Bellator, he does boxing, he does BKFC, et cetera, et cetera. Place, yeah. But, that really hurt him. And, that's a high-level cut guy. Don't you want the highest-level cut guys in there with the highest-level athletes, what they're not allowed to have a voice when their income gets cut in more than half? That a lot of people criticize Brendan Schaub constantly because of his popularity, but give Schaub some credit. He's at least mentioned the McGregor thing, and he was one of the first people to say, listen, this is how much money I'm losing because I'm on the hustle here, and I have somewhat of a name, and I'm able to get these sponsors. He showed that. So
the UFC is in a position to continue to control the narrative, and until things play out in the legal system, they're not really obligated to do that. They're just going to kind of wait to play their hand. And to be fair, some MMA media members, I'm reluctant to call a lot of them journalists, but MMA media members, they're there on assignment to provide a job. They're there with assignments to do the fight results, to do specific articles, and sometimes they're not sent there to talk about these things, but I feel like it's the right thing to do, you know, and whatever amount of fear or trepidation you may have in talking about these issues, all you have to really do is just consider the type of fear and trepidation that the victims of these crime sprees feel, and it pales in comparison. It's the right thing to do.
I agree with you, brother. And if you want to see more of Cody's stuff, you can follow him at Report Combat, and you can check out worldcombatreport.com. What's on the horizon, my friend?
More of the same. We're going to continue. Like editorials are a little bit more my bread and butter. I do some fight analysis, but typically it's more long form writing like this, where we like to dive into and unpack, you know, some more complex topics. Not always as dark as things like this, but that's kind of the way we like to do things over at WCR.
Awesome, brother. I will be following, and I appreciate you coming on. Everybody needs to go check out the website. We will have you on again as things develop. God bless you for what you're doing, my friend. I really do appreciate it. We need more voices like yourself. That is Cody Shoup of WorldCombatReport.com. Please go check him out. If you want to support me, guys, you can thumb this video up right now. Thumb it up. Share it with others. If you're new to this channel, join the Burmese Brigade. We do a lot more than just McGregor, Epstein, Bannon, Bilderberg. We do interviews with people like Dan Dix of Press for Truth, Whitney Webb coming up in December. I'm trying to hammer home a date. It's so hard to lock her down. If you like documentary films, I do them. Please check them out. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture. All free right here in the documentaries playlist section. And if you like that and you want to support me, $5, $10, $15, it means the world to me. That's how I'm doing this 3 to 7 times a day on subjects that matter. We're going to come back with a big Epstein update, possibly even another Black Book Epstein AMA. It's going to be an Epstein day. I can promise you that. It's snowy and cold out here in upstate New York. I love you guys. I want to thank you for joining me, and I'll see you on the flip side. Whoop, wrong one.